Today is July 1, 2024. My name is Rob Carr of Kalamazoo Right to Life. This is Pro-Life Week. Please, please, please tell me that you are not surprised by how badly Joe Biden did in that debate. Please tell me you're not shocked, because we've known for almost 4 years now that he is just not as cognitively acute as he needs to be the leader of the free world. I mean, his performance was tragic. It was a disaster. It was the Titanic and the Lusitania and 9/11 all rolled into one. It was just horrible. And I've heard people say that it was probably the worst debate performance in American history. I mean, and I agree completely. When I think back to 1984, when the issue of age came up with Ronald Reagan, and he's debating former Vice President Walter Mondale, who was the Democratic nominee in '84. And there was a question about, this is a famous part of debate history. Reagan is asked about the issue of his age, and at this point he's up for re-election. I believe he was 73, and he said that he would not, for political purposes, exploit his opponent's youth and inexperience. And the whole audience is just in the aisles laughing. And you look at Walter Mondale, the opponent, and he's got this huge smile on his face because it was funny. It was a funny line. And it diffused the issue of age regarding Ronald Reagan. It diffused that issue. And he went on to just decimate Mondale in the election that November. But we're a long ways away from how debates are run these days. And there was a lot of congeniality and respect for each other. There was a lot of proper decorum, and that's gone. And I'm not sure if Trump is completely to blame for that, or at least in part to blame, but it's now a blood sport. And those Biden and Trump really hate each other. They really do. And you can tell it in their body language and how they talked about each other. But Biden looked bad. He just looked bad. And the next morning, the New York Times became the first newspaper. I mean, it's a major newspaper, basically saying to Biden, it's time to pull out, to hand the baton to somebody else for the nomination. Finish out your term, but you're done. And then on Sunday, yesterday, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution did the same thing, and apparently this morning, the Chicago Tribune is calling on Biden to pull out, to give it up. So then there's the question. So who's he going to give it to? And I know there's been Gavin Newsom's been talked about, Gretchen Whitmer's been talking about, but then there's that issue. What do you do with my favorite vice president, Kamala Harris? What do you do about her? Because why did Biden pick her in the first place? Because she checked off two boxes. She was a woman and she was a black woman. So you needed her on the ticket. So now, is there any consideration that if Biden were theoretically going to pull out of the race, that they're going to pick another candidate other than Kamala Harris? I mean, how is that going to be received by the black community, primarily by black women, who, even more than black men, are part of that core constituency for the Biden coalition? How are they going to say, Kamala, you've been great, but we're gonna put in Gretchen Whitmer, let's say? I don't think that's going to happen. Actually, as much as I think Biden should step out of the race. I really do. I mean, he really should withdraw. He really should. He is not able to handle questions. Oh, and speaking of that, the ground rules said that you could have no notes, you could have some water, I think in a pen, a paper and a pencil or a pen, but you can't bring any notes into the debate stage. When you're not speaking, your microphone was muted, which aided and helped Trump because he couldn't interrupt. He had to be disciplined, which was a good thing for Trump, because for the most part he was disciplined. I mean, he didn't necessarily convey a lot of facts. He really has a problem. He says we had the best whatever ever. We had the best economy ever. We had the best unemployment rate ever. When he throws in the word ever, it just sounds like these things have never happened before. We had the lowest illegal immigration ever. Oh, it was a lot lower during the Reagan years. I mean, so he exaggerates way too much himself, and that's a fault of his. Why didn't he say something like, on day one, Joe Biden canceled construction for the Keystone Pipeline? We went almost immediately from being an oil exporter to become an oil importer. I mean, he could have talked about that. When the issue of COVID came up and how that was handled, he could have, because Biden said that I inherited a big mess when I took office. Well, why didn't Trump say, Joe, when you became president, when you took office, I had given you the vaccine. I mean, the vaccine from the beginning, research and protocols and development and funding, until it was actually on the market, was about 9 months. I mean, he talked about warp speed, getting a vaccine. Trump succeeded in getting a vaccine on the market by the time his term of office ended in January. I think it was in December, the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines were beginning to become available. I mean, Biden had this with him, the vaccine. But why didn't Trump mention that he was the one that brought the vaccine? Why didn't Trump say, that when I was, before COVID hit and decimated everybody's economies, why didn't he say, the black unemployment was 3.5% or 3.7%, or women's unemployment was the lowest ever? Why didn't he throw out some numbers? He really did not do a good job defending his first term. He really did not. And I truly believe that Trump's policies were great for Americans. And Biden's has been so bad. When Biden talks about how the unemployment rate or the inflation rate has gone down from like 7 or 8% down to like 2 or 3 now, he's not telling the whole story, because if food prices are up 25, 30% and your income is going up 5%, well, you just lost 20 to 25% of your purchasing power. Well, that's a 25% loss in income. Why doesn't Trump talk about those things? I mean, he really had opportunities to be more, to me, convincing that he is the candidate of choice. But on the other hand, he didn't interrupt Biden, and he just let Biden talk, and he let Biden destroy himself. And I guess for that, it's a good thing, because Joe Biden is a very weak candidate, and I blame his wife, I blame the Biden family for elder abuse, propping up this man who is just not able to handle these kinds of settings without a teleprompter. Now, all of my listeners or people who watch this little program know that a lot of times I'll be reading from like a text, and I've got notes that I've prepared, and I'm reading whether it's a statement or a quote from somebody else. So my paper is my teleprompter, so to speak. But I'm not running for president. I'm just an average guy living in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I'm not running for the highest office in the free world. But, and then right after the debate, or the argument had been, well, that Biden had done so well in the State of the Union address back in, I think it was March. Well, he was reading it from a teleprompter. He was reading it. All he has to do is just read the words on that little screen. And he did so well the next day. Apparently, Biden had a little rally in North Carolina. And he said, oh, there's the old Joe Biden's back. He was reading from a teleprompter. You get him in front of a camera with a microphone, with no notes and no teleprompter, he is lost. He is just befuddled. And the entire American public saw that Thursday night. They saw how bad he really looked. And now, everybody might be thinking that Trump won that debate. Well, I don't necessarily think Trump was perfect. I mean, he exuded energy and strength. Clearly he won that in hands down. The contrast was just so obvious. But I didn't necessarily like how he answered these questions. But to me, I think the real winner was not Trump, but the real winner was Robert Kennedy Jr. Because for a person who will never vote for Trump and maybe reluctantly wanting to vote for Biden, I think this opens up a door for some maybe never Biden people to abandon the Democratic fold and become an independent voter and vote for Robert Kennedy. So my prediction, I have nothing to back this up on, but my prediction is that when the opinion polls begin to come out later this week, I think Joe Biden will have lost about 4 to 5% in the popular vote. But I think Trump is only going to pick up about 1 or 2%. I think Robert Kennedy is going to pick up about 3 or 4%. But Biden, it makes you wonder, why did the Biden campaign really think that having a debate was going to show the public what a in-command candidate Joe Biden really is? I mean, he is clearly a flawed candidate. And it's not necessarily his fault because he's aging. He's 81 years old. Maybe he has early onset dementia, maybe not. Maybe he does. He should never have been put in that situation. Never. But his campaign propped him up there. And he had a whole week to prepare. And they said he's over-prepared. And he had so many facts in his head that they were swirling around. And he messed up. You can make excuses. He should not be the nominee. But I have a feeling they're stuck with him. I really believe they are stuck with Joe Biden. They shouldn't be, but they're stuck with him. And they will lose with Joe Biden. Donald Trump will win the election. I'm convinced of that now more than ever. This debate settled that question for the American public. Joe Biden is not prepared for another 4 years as president. He is not ready for prime time as the leader of the free world. And for whatever you feel about Donald Trump, warts and all, he will become the next president, the 47th president of the United States. With that, I'll let you go. I'll see you next time.